Welcome to the Chorus One podcast. In this podcast, we explore the emerging open financial system facilitated by scalable, interoperable blockchain networks. Tune in every Monday to dive deep into cutting-edge projects and protocols with Chorus One team members and guests.
Hi, and welcome to the Chorus One podcast. My name is Brian Crane. I'm one of the co-founders of Chorus One.
Hi, I'm Felix. I'm a research analyst at Chorus One.
Cool. So thanks so much for joining us again today. Now, many of you will have heard the episode we did with Gregory of the Regen Network projects. And in that episode, we already mentioned that we've been working with Regen Network on estimating our carbon footprint and on offsetting that. So this is something we're super excited about. And today we wanted to talk a little bit about that estimation we've done. We'll talk about some of the different ways we could offset it. And then, we'd love your input on which way we should go here. But first of all, let's give a little bit of context here. Of course, it's well known that at this point, proof of work is hugely energy consuming. Felix, I think you have had some sort of data that you took out, no?
Yeah, I looked quickly at some recent studies, and basically one of them said okay, in 2018, the energy consumed was as much as Hungary, and obviously, the proponents always argue it's mostly renewable energy. But then there's also other studies that kind of show that the carbon emission is still pretty high because, for example, in one region in China, the miners use in the wet season the hydro energy because it's 3 times higher than in winter. And then in winter, they kind of compensate by using coal, for example. So in the end, the carbon emissions end up being somewhere in between the nations of Jordan and Sri Lanka. So it's already pretty big. And that's just for the Bitcoin network.
Yeah, this is an interesting question, how bad something like Bitcoin actually is for the environment. I know opinions differ, and there are some interesting studies about the usage of renewable. And I'm not totally sure myself. But in any case, I think what's very clear at this point, right, is that global warming is just a massive issue and the climate's a massive issue. And, people have to take action, including companies. And I think if we can, in the blockchain space, also make sure that this infrastructure that's being built is actually sustainable and doesn't damage the environment, then that would be amazing. And so that's basically what we've tried to tackle here. Now, of course, the benefit is already that proof of stake networks are pretty energy efficient, right? There's no Chorus One data centers. There's no massive farms where we try to find cheap electricity and build up some big thing, right? That doesn't exist. We do have some space in physical data centers where we have servers. We have a cloud infrastructure. We have, of course, a team. But it's certainly not on the scale of a proof of work thing. But maybe that brings us to the topic of, what is our carbon footprint? So Felix, how did you go about estimating that?
Yeah, so generally, you just mentioned, there's different factors that you have to factor in if you try to estimate your carbon footprint as a company operating Validator. So the main one is also the infrastructure and basically all the energy costs associated with that. For us, for example, it's the validator nodes in the data centers and then kind of the surrounding architecture that we need for Sentry nodes, orchestration, logging, monitoring, and alerting. And if you checked out our infrastructure document, we will also put a link again into the show notes. You can see that it's quite a big estate. And in total, it's kind of it's 2 data center nodes and then about 40 plus cloud instances that run this. So the estimation I did together with Brecht from the Regen Network is based on kind of trying to find out how much carbon is emitted by this infrastructure. And through that, we need different factors, but we'll get to that in a second. And then the second big factor, aside from just the infrastructure, is the business operations. So I think, Brian, you mentioned we have obviously a team. I think what's very important, basically, usually you kind of could estimate how much is the office building using energy, how much are the employees commuting to work. For us, we are a remote company, so we mainly focused on kind of the flights we are taking, so the airline miles we take, because we take kind of quarterly retreats and also go to other events. So we estimated our airline miles that we traveled as part of Chorus One since we started operating and used some studies to find the carbon emission that is associated with that. And then adding these 2 points up, so the infrastructure emissions and the business emissions together will deliver us an estimation of the carbon footprint of Chorus One.
And then what were the results from that estimation?
Maybe first of all, I can tell you like how, since when we were operating, we've been basically running these validator nodes since the beginning of 2019, a bit earlier, more or less. We started the estimation there with the Cosmos game of stakes, when we really like started using our real kind of production infrastructure with all the failover and all these cloud instances. So since then, together with the flights, in total, we kind of emitted around 70 tons of CO2. And that is kind of what we will be offsetting in collaboration with the Regen Network, as we've already mentioned in the other episode with Gregory.
And then we don't just offset that, right? But we're going to offset a substantially larger amount for a few reasons. First of all, there may well be some things we didn't measure, right? Or there could be some inaccuracy, and maybe our actual carbon footprint is actually higher, a little bit higher than what we've estimated, even though we've put quite a lot of time in it and we're quite careful with our estimation. So that's one reason. The other reason is also that, sort of if every business offsets just their own footprint, but then, other businesses don't, obviously you're not going to get to a sort of a carbon neutral world. But, businesses that can do that is fantastic if they can offset more. And so that's what we've decided to do as well. So I think we'll probably offset around 2.5 to 3 times our estimated footprint.
Yeah, maybe also regarding that, like during the estimation, you're using a lot of assumptions too, right? And you never know how exact they are. So basically you more or less take some numbers and then something comes out. And obviously, yeah, if you want to have a positive impact, you might as well add something on top, some buffer.
And one thing that was also, I thought was interesting, what came out with the AWS estimation, right? That they have some regions that are actually carbon neutral. And then we had a whole bunch of nodes accidentally in a region that's actually, I think, the worst of AWS. So they use a lot of coal. I think that's Eastern US. So we did decide to shift the nodes that we could from AWS into a carbon neutral region. And the rest, of course, we would still have to offset. But that's interesting. And we're recognizing the effort that AWS makes as well there to create a carbon neutral operation.
I think, also other big cloud providers like Google, for example, is apparently 100% carbon neutral. So that was also interesting to learn for me that these cloud providers already kind of try to limit the impact of their data centers.
So again, to come back to the offsetting, Regen Network, the core premise of Regen Network, and I urge people to go back and check our other episode, is that you can measure the environmental impact from different actions, and you can kind of have an agreement about it, track it on a blockchain. You can also link payments to the fulfillment of these agreements. And of course, one of the nice things is that it's perfectly suited for something like this, right? Where we basically want to say, okay, we can put up some money for people to take some action that offsets an amount of carbon that we want. So that's kind of how we've been approaching this, and been in discussion with Regen Network about a bunch of different ways or projects we could support to do this offset. So the idea here was that we would run through 3 of them that are 3 possible projects. In the show notes, you're going to find a link to a blog post that describes these 3 projects in a little bit more detail. And then we'd love your input. We'd love for you to let us know which project you think we should support, which you think is the coolest project, the best project. And then in the end, we're going to support one of these projects, and we'll try to work with Regen Network as well so that we can do this offset actually on their blockchain. And yeah, that's basically the plan. So we'd love for you to let us know what you think and what project is your favorite.
So let's go through the 3 pilot programs of the Regen Network that we chose as one of the 3 that will make it and that we will support. So the first one is about the Amazon rainforest. There's the Amazon Rainforest Foundation, and basically you can donate to the Rainforest Foundation and it will mint tokens with estimations of the carbon that's made possible by this donation. So basically by supporting this project, you're kind of contributing to save the rainforest. The second pilot program is in Barbados. It's called the Walker's Reserve. And there are some sand quarries in the Barbados Islands. And basically they want to regenerate this land to turn into a forest food oasis. And there is an opportunity to purchase these regeneration rights and credits from this product that would have also a massive impact on the carbon drawdown from this land restoration.
So the third one is a project in Ecuador So in Ecuador, there's this cacao cooperative collective. I think Gregory mentioned there's 1,200 farmers that are part of this. And they now use this data, which I think comes from the geospatial or satellite data from NASA and the European Space Agency. So they use this data to basically track the health of the soil. And the health of the soil is a great indicator for how much carbon gets sequestered in the soil. And the idea here is basically that you have all of these different farmers in this cooperative. With the data, it gets measured how well their farming practices, like how good they are for the environment. And, the better they are, the more they get paid. So they basically get like kind of an extra payment for the cacao they produce, the more it helps the environment. So that's the idea there.
Now you heard about the 3 pilot programs. Again, we will link in the show notes to a blog post. There will be like better descriptions and then you will be able to vote on this. But maybe also we want to continue this partnership with the Regen Network. So as an idea, we want to have other validators also join us and try to offset their carbon footprint. So we will potentially work out a proposal to offset the entire Cosmos Hub validation infrastructure, or maybe even potentially other zones or other proof-of-stake networks. And what we've been thinking about maybe is to use the community pool to do this and maybe even do it on a regular basis. So right now, as many of you know, the Cosmos Hub, we have this community pool where a part of the fees and inflation in the network goes to. There's already above 100,000 atoms in the pool, so that's like $500,000 US. And I think this would be one great way to utilize this pool.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that would be a really cool thing if the Cosmos community kind of made that decision. It would be a very powerful thing. Financially, as we've seen, for example, in our instance, it's actually not that much money. We expected that it would be significantly more expensive. We expect maybe it's going to be like, substantial expense. We wanted to do it in any case, but, it turned out it was actually not that much. So I think it will be in the order of a few thousands of dollars for us. So actually to do this from a Cosmos Hub perspective is very doable. So that's one possible path. Of course, the other path is just any validator or another company that wants to offset, but probably especially a validator, we could, help with some data, and the Regen Network guys would also be happy to help. So if you want to get started with this now, feel free to get in touch and we'll try to help you out with your estimation and offset. And then the other thing, the community proposal, also let us know what you think of that. I think it could be a really cool first thing that the community pool gets used for. We'll have to do some work together with Regen Network, maybe on estimating that and thinking about the right approach for it. But that's also something that we might do at some point in the near future. Thanks so much for tuning in. As discussed, we have links for anything in the show notes. Stop by our Telegram. Let us know what you think. And especially let us know what you think about which project we should use to offset our carbon footprint. And of course, the wonderful news now, if you are delegating with Course One, or if you plan to delegate with Course One, then you know that you're having kind of a positive impact on the environment. So that's a wonderful thing too. Thanks so much for tuning in, and we'll be back next week.
Thank you for listening to the Chorus One podcast. Visit chorus.one for more information about our work. Don't forget to subscribe to the podcast to stay tuned on new episodes airing every Monday.